Hello, hello, hello. It's week 3 of the NFL season. We're talking football with Mike Martz and Jim Thomas. I'm here from our Talking Football headquarters in beautiful suburban Oakville, Missouri. Mike is looking out over the par 3, right? Aren't you? What
Yeah.
what hole is that, Michael?
Number 15 on the front course on the Lewis and Clark course. Yeah,
Do you have you birdied that before or no?
I have actually. I have. In fact, I had two birdies there last year.
No, it never a hole in one though, or
I've never had a hole in one. The hole's too small. I can't. My
not
golf
even in
professional.
putt putt. You've had a couple in putt putt probably over the
I
years.
never did the putt putt stuff. Never
You
did that.
never played putt putt?
No.
Not once?
Mm.
Not even when you're on a family vacation with Julie and the boys and Emily? No?
Not that I recall. May have. I just don't remember it.
Why? Wow. That's a subject for another show, I guess. Mike, an unpredictable week 3. You know, we've talked many times on last year's show and even a little bit this year how the beginning of the season can be very unpredictable, and also how the NFL is a week to week business. What happens last week usually has no impact whatsoever on what happens in the following week. And what a crazy week it was in the National Football League, a week 2. The underdog won 7 times, 5 on the road. And if you count a couple of cases where in betting jargon, where the winning team didn't cover, you only had 6 games out of 16 where the team that was favored won and covered the point spread. Mike, we still both went 4-2 last week. That was straight up, not counting the point spread. So we're doing pretty well this year, but just a crazy week, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But you know something, Jim? The beginning of the season every year, I always said the first 3 games of the season are so different than the rest of the season. You know, most of the guys are healthy. Everybody has a different approach to the opener. Some guys are much further along than others. You don't really have a personality of your team yet when other teams look at you, trying to figure you out somewhat. So it's kind of a hit or miss deal. But after week 3, after this week, you kind of define who you are, and then people kind of go to work on you. And then injuries start to happen too. So things start to separate usually after week 3. And you start to get on a run or all those good things. So I think the first 3 weeks are always a mess.
Yeah, and you have new coaches. This year there were 8 head coaches, but even more than that, there's always the carousel of new coordinators, and
Yeah, right.
it takes a few games to get a. You maybe might know what. Okay, this coordinator's from this coaching tree or whatever, but it takes a few games to kind of get a feel for what the coordinators are doing, doesn't it?
Well, Atlanta's a great example. In the opener, they didn't look very good,
No.
just from a scheme standpoint, you know. And then, of course, this last game they come back and had this great victory and really look good. So they made terrific improvements, and that's why I say, you know, nobody's in the first 3 weeks. They're just so different from week to week until they settle into the personality and start going. So this week it'll be better, and then I think things settle down after that.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of injuries, obviously the NFL is a battle of attrition, and we had more guys go down. Pacheco goes down in Kansas City. He's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. McCaffrey, this was after last week's show, Mike. They put him on IR, which means at least a couple 3 more games for him. The 49ers also lost Deebo Samuel at least for a few weeks. The Rams now, they lost Pakua in the first game. Now Cooper Kupp.
But they also lost all those linemen, Jim.
What's that?
All those offensive linemen with the Rams.
Yeah. Well, they started the season they were without both tackles, or
yeah, and that's the team right now that is in the Red Cross tent. I mean, they're really struggling. I mean, and he's a terrific coach. It would be a miracle for him to pull this win off against 49ers this week.
Yeah.
I know the 49ers missed those 2 guys, but they're still a really good football team.
Well, and they still have some guys. I mean, they still have.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah, they
have Kittle and this Jordan Mason. Right. He's pretty good back.
Yeah, he's really good. Very good.
And obviously Miami, Tua Tagovailoa, he goes out in the Thursday night game against Buffalo and with a concussion, so he's going to be out. I guess there's a chance Jordan Love could play for Green Bay, but I mean he's practiced a little bit. You're still expecting Malik Willis, aren't you, or no?
I would think Malik because they've won with him. I wouldn't be in a hurry to get him back. I just make sure if I was them, and I'm sure they will. There should be no question or danger of him, further injuring it just because he comes back early. If they're convinced he's ready to go, that's one thing. But to get him back too early would be a big mistake.
Michael, a lot of low-scoring games early in the season. Only 3 games in which a team scored 30 or more points this past week. Close games are a fact of life. 12 of the 16 games were decided by 7 points or less. Seems like teams are running the ball more. I just kind of looked up. It's very unusual now for teams to have more rushing yards in a game than passing yards, but it happened. I'm looking at my notes here. 2, 4, 6 happened 8 times last week. Anything you see happening there that's
yeah. This is back to old time football. I think that whole mess that we talked about of all that snap the ball as fast as you can, stay in the formation or two, all that Oregon stuff they did years ago that's infiltrated in the shotgun. And, that's kind of on its way out finally, thank goodness, because now you can start playing football again and get back to rushing the football, from the quarterback under the center, which is a lot more deceptive than being in the shotgun, slowing the game down, grinding it down, keeping the game within reach the whole time instead of just coming out and doing that fast-paced, throw it all around. The other part of his defenses have caught that stuff. They've caught up to it.
Yeah.
And it's hard on offensive linemen to back up like that all the time. And you start losing those linemen. Now you want to go back and run the ball, and you can't. Here's the thing I know about winning football, for whatever it's worth. Everything starts in the offensive line on a football team. It just does. And in camp, that's why the first week or so, we spent so much time rushing the football and banging those inside guys and getting that offensive line up to speed and confident with it. So we knew that if we had in a pinch, we want to come back and really grind it out, we could. If you don't do that, you just can't develop a running game mid-season. It just doesn't go.
Yeah. Things definitely are cyclical in the NFL. Do you think there's so many young quarterbacks playing? Do you think maybe that's part of the running, the revised running game, just because they don't want to give all these young quarterbacks too much at the start?
That may be part of it. I think more than that is you got a lot of very inexperienced coordinators.
Yes.
Young offensive coordinators that really, I mean, I said this last week. If you're a young offensive coordinator and you're playing the Chiefs, good luck. I don't care how good you are, because he's going to mess with you and he's going to get stuff you've not seen before. And that's hard on young guys. They're trying to figure out. It's just the thing I'd been in the league so long and coaching so long that when I saw stuff, I already seen it 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And I knew kind of how we needed to address it. But years ago, I wouldn't have known that. So we'd spend hours trying to adapt and do this, that. You can't. And that's what they're going through right now. They're learning football.
Yeah. Mike, we're only 2 weeks in. I'm sick of all the field goals. I'm tired of field goals. There were 14. Remember how rare a 50-yard field goal used to be?
Oh, yeah.
There were 14 50-yard field goals last week, including, hopefully I'll pronounce this guy's name right, Kayemi Fairborn, 59-yarder, Matt Prater, 57-yarder. Pittsburgh are 2-0. They've scored only 1 touchdown. Washington beat the Giants 21-18 last week. You're thinking, they scored 3 touchdowns. So they kicked 7 field goals. Houston and Chicago last week, that game, they had 5 field goals of 53 yards or longer in that game. For the weekend, last weekend, 73 of 79 field goals made, 92.4%, which is just ungodly to me. Are the kickers too good, Mike? Do we need to narrow the goalposts?
We do. There's no question. I think that's a good solution to it. I think that would be a good thing to do, narrow it, other than messing with the game itself and limiting however you do it. I do think that narrowing the goalposts will make it a little bit more difficult for them. I think that's a good choice.
And plus, kickers are flaky. Of all the positions, didn't your place kickers drive you the nuts craziest?
We were fortunate with Jeff Wilkins. I mean, he was as straight and strong and up. I mean, he was a terrific athlete. Aside from that, the guys that I've been around, place kickers, no, they weren't flaky. I do know some that were in college. We had a couple that were different, but the guys that I've been familiar with in the league were strong. They were good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, money, I believe, is what they called Jeff Wilkins. Michael, who's your couple most disappointing teams? It could
Oh,
be
the
some of these.
Cowboys.
Pardon me.
Cowboys for sure. The Cowboys. My gosh,
Mm-hmm.
that embarrassment for them last week. And here's what I know about a good team that's been embarrassed like that: they will come back and play the best football they've ever played. That just always happens.
Yeah, yeah.
So
What the hell happened to them last week?
they just got beat up in the trenches bad. When you watch that football game, the defensive front, they just teed off on them and knocked them back. And there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing they could do.
Mm-hmm.
The secondary didn't want to come up and hit anybody. The linebackers were getting cut off. It was like they were running against bags. I mean, when you rush the football like that and the back has those kind of yards and 4 TDs, something's wrong. There's a mindset there that's just wrong because they're a good football team. The other thing is the league had gotten to the point where on defense, you're playing with smaller linebackers because nobody run the football. Well, that's not going to happen anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is you got all these pass rushers in Dallas on the defensive front. They don't want to play against the run. They don't see it. They don't, they get up in front of people and people play catch up throwing the football. Now you're playing a team that puts the blade down on you. They don't really know how to play anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Some of these 0-2 teams, Jacksonville 0-2. Is Trevor Lawrence just not the franchise quarterback that we saw? I mean, he's been at it for a while now. Are there other factors at play?
There's a lot of factors with Trevor Lawrence. Just like Sam Darnold, you can be in teams that just don't give you much support or help and end up rotating out of the league. Sam's finally got a good team that can coach him and get him in a position to have success. And I think that's a little bit that way down Jacksonville. I still believe he's just a terrific player. And it's early yet, it just is. So we'll see how that comes out. Sometimes you come out and you struggle a little bit, and then it just takes a game or two and you get going again. I think that'll happen with them.
Carolina 0-2. Mike, they've been outscored 73-13. How bad is that team?
I haven't seen the games because it would be hard for me to watch it.
What, just because it's so bad?
Really bad. So much of what happens with these young quarterbacks, Jim, is if you have a coordinator, if I know you're a young coordinator and I'm a defensive guy, I'm just going to blitz you like crazy because you're not going to know the answers for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happened to Chicago. That's what's happened, there too in Carolina. They can't, once you find out that you got an Achilles heel there that's torn a little bit, they just go after it. And until they can prove they can handle pressures, I don't care who's playing quarterback.
Yeah, yeah. And Bryce Young, 2-16 now as a starter. It's the worst record through 18 games in the Super Bowl era of any quarterback taken number 1 overall. He's been benched. Andy Dalton's in. Do you agree with the benching, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think sometimes, and I don't think it's as much on him as it is just the entire organization and who they're playing with, and what they're doing. I mean, it's layered, it's complicated. It's not so easy as just say, oh, it's a quarterback can't, he can't do it. No, there's way more involved in that. Now, Andy Dalton comes in and he's played and all that, but if they don't block him, he's going to have the same problems.
Yeah, yeah. So, but maybe if Bryce Young, maybe for a couple, 3 weeks, sits back and watches, he can come back and learn from it and be better for it.
I've had a number of quarterbacks in my life that I've coached that have gone through this.
Right.
We had one at Arizona State. He ended up being the MVP, but he started off really bad. He's just shell shocked. We sat him down for 3 weeks. He came back and he was just lights out. It does happen to you. He feels like he's got to win the game somehow. And I think the best thing he can do is, like I told Alex Smith in the 49ers when I left, you just need to go to a different team. He just needs to go to a different team. He just needs to get out of there.
Looks like it's definitely working for Sam Darnold, huh? Changes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great example, right? Everybody thought he was washed up, he can't play, blah blah blah. Now he's on a real good team and a guy that has an exceptional way about him in terms of coaching quarterbacks and passing game. And Sam looks like the player that he should have been.
Yeah, yeah. Who do you like among the teams? Maybe the 2-0 teams or even 1-1 teams. Who's really impressed you so far?
Well, obviously the Saints. I mean,
Mhm.
the first game against Carolina, yeah, well, it's Carolina, but then they go down and physically just beat the daylights out of a good Dallas team.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
that was it. No prisoners there now, no
Yeah.
prisoners, and a team that can do that on the road against a storied franchise like that, you got to think that there's something going on down there. And Clint Kubiak, the new coordinator down there,
Yeah.
see, it's different. He mixes things in. It's more of a complex offense. He can't predict where he's going with stuff. They're just really well schooled. They know what they're doing, and they're really good on defense. I think they're right now and I know somebody's got him in the top 10 at number 8 or 9 power
Uh-huh.
rankings, but I would have much higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, just all the points they've scored on like 15 consecutive possessions. Alvin Kamara had he had just about 190 yards rushing in that Dallas game, 4 TDs. It's just a pretty amazing showing. I guess for it helps to be the son of a coordinator, Gary Kubiak, and a head coach. Some of that just you pick that up by osmosis, don't you?
No, no, not at all. I think he's very bright, and I think he's learned this game at a different level than most guys do.
Hmm.
And I think obviously his dad was really good too, but um, I just because I just don't follow that. You
Right.
still got
Okay.
to put together and do it, and that's what he's
Yeah.
done. And you got to give all the credit to Clint. He's just a brilliant guy in what he's doing. Some guys can call plays, some guys can't. There's just a feel for it. There's just a
Mhm.
whole different approach to it, and he's got a great knack for it. He understands the game at a different level.
Yeah, yeah. Now, and they, from what I understand, that he's been using a lot of two tight end sets, a lot of
Yes,
two back sets.
yes.
So, kind of fits into what you were talking about earlier about maybe teams are running the ball more, but that's a little different. We've seen so many where sets where it's the three wide receivers and the quarterback and the shotgun. Not so much with him over in New Orleans.
So here's the brilliance of this. Just what we said about Dallas. Dallas on defense is built to rush the passer. Period. You got light guys that can run like crazy and come downhill. The linebackers are little guys. That whole thing is built for the passing game, and they feel like if they can get ahead, people force people to throw the football, blah blah blah, all that good stuff. He looks at that. No, it's not going to happen. We're going to go in two tight ends. We're going to put the blade down and make them play football.
Yeah.
And they did. And they just pounded them. Anytime a back goes for 200 yards, you've had your butt handed to you.
And the Chiefs, I found obviously very interesting. They're just, I guess that it's a testament to knowing how to close out games. But they're 2-0. Isaiah Likely's toe is barely on the line in game one against Baltimore, and Harbaugh was going to go for two, so they might have lost that game. And then they rally against the Bengals, even though Mahomes throws for only 151 yards, his career low in a game where he didn't leave because of injury, and they win on again another one of these 50-yard field goals. I think it was 51 yards by Harrison Butker as
No,
time
that's not
expired.
how they won, though.
What's that?
That's not how they won. They
Well,
won
that's
on
how
a
they got
fourth.
more points. But go ahead
No,
there.
no, 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 no. They won on a 4th and 15 penalty that set up
Did you like
that
that
field goal.
penalty or not?
Well, yeah, it's a penalty. I mean, it's just stupid play by the DB. He went through him. I mean, he got there too soon. And
Yeah.
he didn't have to do it. He just got so anxious he got there too soon. Had he played it just normal, the game's over with.
Yeah.
They win. And it came
Yeah.
down to that play, and it's just unfortunate.
The that it still helps to have a pass rush, and they just the Chiefs couldn't handle Trey Hendrickson. He had I think 2 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, and a lot of penalties he lost.
I think the Chiefs are going to really struggle as we get going here. They've a couple things kind of got figured out in that game. Number one is what I've always said against a defense, and it's what we did against that defense because the genesis of it is the old Philadelphia defense, right? multiple blitzes and say, you got to put the blade down on them. You got to run the football, and you have to be patient with doing that. And that's what basically that's what they did, and they had some real success rushing the football, and I think the left tackle situation is really, really going to be detrimental for him.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talked about Atlanta showing a lot of improvement between week 1 and 2. Cincinnati really did. They were awful in week 1, but they came out and multiple tight ends here. I think Burrow, I'm looking at my notes here. I think he 14 receptions for 151 yards to tight ends. 3 different tight ends caught passes, a lot of multiple tight end sets, and they did things a little differently against the Chiefs, and it worked out for them pretty well.
It did, and I think if I'm going to play the Chiefs, I'm going to tell them being multiple tight ends, and not let them start dialing up all that magic stuff, right? And we're gonna run the football and throw the ball to the tight ends and the one wide receiver that's in the game, and get them into a vanilla defense, so to speak, so that they can't take control of the defense. And that's what they did, and they did a great job with it.
Yeah, yeah. Let's go all the way back to the Thursday night game. Buffalo 31-10, just shellacked the Dolphins. Buffalo very beat up on defense, but they played 2 safeties deep. We're seeing a lot of that, Mike, and they kind of took away the Dolphins' deep game. But you can still throw deep on cover 2, right?
Yeah, you can. What you have to do, though, is you have to get another tight end in there, an extra guy to help double on those ends so you can hold the ball a little bit. Yeah, you can do that. But you're not going to do it with open edges in a back. By that, I mean no help, just 5 offensive linemen in a back and protections. You've got to, in order to do that, you got to be able to hold the ball a little bit and let your speed run away. And I don't know if they can do that. I don't know if that's in their DNA to do that. But, they're really, and I say they're really good teams, and I really do mean it. A team like for instance, New Orleans, they'll do that.
Right.
They can morph in and out of whatever they have to do to win. And the problem with them is I just don't know that you can throw deep, but you're going to have to address the protection issue first.
Yeah. Boy, Buffalo doesn't seem to be, and it's just 2 games. I realize they don't seem to be missing Stephon Diggs, do they? Josh Allen has really done a good job of spreading the ball around.
Yeah, and the coordinator there has done a great job. And I don't know why Josh Allen can't get any love. I don't know. I just he's a pretty impressive guy when you watch him play. I don't know.
Hey, we're going to be right back. We're going to ask Mike. We got a couple of good questions this week. We'll be back in a second here on Talking Football with Mike, Martz, and JT.
Munganast St. Louis Acura has the all-electric Acura ZDX. The ZDX can go up to 313 miles on a single charge, and the DC fast charging lets the ZDX gain up to 80 miles in just 10 minutes. When you lease an Acura ZDX, you can save up to $7,500 with a federal EV lease credit. Or you can buy the new ZDX and get 0.9% for up to 72 months. Come on in to Munganast St. Louis Acura and take a look at the new ZDX for yourself.
Hey, we're back, and one of my favorite parts of the show, it's time to ask Mike. You listeners, any of you out there, you can ask Mike any week of the season. We're working on some prizes. Maybe next week we're going to give out a new car if they're question selected, Mike. No, probably not. Okay. Anyway, you can email me your questions, jtom72@outlook.com, or you can just reply to me on Twitter. I'm at jtom1, or you can call Mike and just give him the question. His number is no. We're not gonna do that. But first question is Keith, and he just identified himself as from the St. Louis area. And Keith wants to know, Mike, was it ever overwhelming when you were a head coach in the NFL to call plays, manage player personnel, manage the clock, and everything involved in being a head coach?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was at times. That's why I got sick. You just are so involved. You don't sleep. I was involved with the personnel. I was doing the scripts for the offense. I was coaching the quarterback. calling plays, doing all the head coach stuff with the team. And by the time you get to game time, you're exhausted. And then to be sharp to deal with all that stuff. What I did do a good job during the game is really having other guys handle some of that for you, to be in the box about reminders about this, that, or the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't smart enough to do that. Of course, they do that. All the teams do that today, but
yeah. And also one thing about being a head coach, basically, I guess every day except for Tuesday, you had media obligations, and not just the local media. You'd have national guys, especially with you being a high-profile team. You'd have all kinds of people coming in, Andrea Kramer, all kinds of people coming in, wanting interviews, wanting a piece of your time. And it's great for the game. It's just another chunk of your time that you have to do.
Yeah, and I used to tell Rick Smith I didn't want to do anything I didn't have to do. And that didn't last. He used to I used to call it a flyby. He'd go by my desk and look in, then he'd come back and look. So I knew he wanted something. And Carol, my assistant, she'd say, I think Rick, hey, so-and-so wants to,
That's the Rick Smith voice.
Yeah,
Rick Smith, the legendary PR head for many, many years for the Rams.
Hey, big guy, we got Andrea Kramer. Now, he comes in and asks for this interview, but they're already set up in the other room. They've been setting up for like 2 hours to do this interview with all the cameras, this, that,
right.
Before he even asked me, so obviously. And then John Shaw would always he wanted me to do those things as often as I could. I didn't like doing them, but as an obligation to John, obviously I would do some that I didn't really want to do. But I've walked out of 2 of them with Andrea because she was just nasty, just really nasty about some things.
AK-47 is what her own cameraman called her, so that was her nickname.
Yeah, I sat down in one interview, I'll never forget, and I sat down and we're going to talk about football, and she goes, nobody likes you. I said, excuse me? She goes, nobody likes you. I said, what do you mean nobody likes me? She said, yeah.
I bet you weren't expecting that one, huh?
No, she was just trying to get this reaction out of me. And I said, well, that's sorry,
Well, I think with rare exception, the local media, especially us regulars, we really enjoyed seeing you. You'd even during the OTAs and that, every once in a while you pop down there and take us, me, RB, and Steve Cordy, you'd take us over to some hole-in-the-wall Mexican place in St. Charles.
Oh, isn't that good, though? It's across the bridge over there. It's not there anymore.
Oh, what, you checked it out to see if it's there or what?
First thing I did when I came back, yeah. I mean, to get the real Mexican food that I'm used to.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't speak English. They had my picture up on the wall, but they didn't speak English. And when I go in there, I just kind of point to what I wanted. And that was a tradition before, when on our way to Macomb for camp. John Ramsdell, the quarterback coach, and we'd stop off there and have lunch. And that was kicking off the season every year. It was great food.
It was good. I remember we were surprised that we went to lunch. It was a lot of fun. Okay. Now, Jason Bourne has asked Mike, and obviously it's not the character from the Matt Damon movies, which were just on last night. I watched one of them with Bourne Identity or one of those. Anyway, he's also, I know he's a big blues fan also, but he wants to know, was there, and I think I know the answer to this, but it's Jason's turn here to ask Mike, any players that you wanted to draft that the front office passed on that kept you up at night? Why didn't we draft this guy?
Just one.
And
one.
Who was that?
Troy Polamalu was the guy I wanted to take. I think it was the 12th pick when we took Jimmy Kennedy, defensive lineman out of Penn State.
Right.
And the discussion with all the personnel guys was, well, Jimmy's not going to be there. He's going to go off in the top 5 or 6 picks. I'm thinking, what are you guys looking at? But we didn't have a safety.
Right.
And so all the personnel guys, they kept saying, well, you never drafted a safety that high. And they said, is there that law someplace? I said, so where are we going to get the safety here?
Right.
And I think this is the 03 season, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right. I think it was 03.
We don't have a safety. And we ended up moving a corner back there, which cost us in the playoffs, right? So
right.
So we could have had Troy Polamalu. Here's how it works. So I'm in the meeting room, John Shaw, Stan Kroenke, all Charlie Arn, all the personnel guys. So there's 13 of us in there. And finally, John Shaw says, Coach Martz, this is obviously going to be your decision, but we're going to take a vote. How many people want Jimmy Kennedy? Raise your hand. Well, everybody raised their hand. Not one guy wanted Troy. And I thought, man, what are you guys thinking? And
Right.
finally said, it's your choice, Coach, but that's where it is. Well, I buckled, and we drafted Jimmy. And we didn't think Jimmy would be there, but he was. So we ended up having to draft him because we said we would. And I still, to this day, am angry about that. Not Jimmy never played. Never played.
Didn't have much of a career. Not nice fellow, but didn't have much of a career.
Never played. He had the heart of a hummingbird. He just did not like football. He just was not a much
pretty small.
Nice kid, not much of a competitor.
Right.
But we could have
Troy is making shampoo commercials to this day.
Just think if we had Troy on that team,
Oh my goodness.
So that's the one that and I tease John Shaw all the time about whenever I see him. He goes, I know, Coach Martz, I know.
Troy Polamalu. I'd heard the Kennedy stuff. This is the first I've actually heard that Polamalu was
he was the choice, yeah. Because they say you never take safeties in the upper half of the draft. That was just so bizarre. If you watch Troy on film, you'd take him when you could get him.
Yeah, yeah. Just a couple notes before we move on. Some United Football League news, and we'll try to pass that on from time to time on Talking Football. But they announced the season's going to start again the end of March 28th. Championship game June the 14th. St. Louis, I heard, was interested in hosting the championship game again, but looks like the league's going to go elsewhere. Once again, it's a 10-game schedule. The Battlehawks are getting 6 home games. So one of the teams in Texas can't. It's supposed to be their home game, and they don't have the venue. So the Battlehawks are getting the game. There'll be some Friday night games. What do you think about Friday night football, Mike?
Well, in the spring, it doesn't really make much difference, I don't think. I think you could get better viewership, to be honest with you, than being on Saturdays. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. So there'll be some Friday night games. Do you like the season starting that late? I liked it better when it started right after the Super Bowl. I don't know.
Well, I think, in fairness to them, you still have to go through the draft and sort through personnel.
Uh-huh.
And I think there are enough outdoor venues probably that kind of needs to be there. Remember, all these guys are practicing outdoors down in San Antonio. So,
right.
I think you can get a little snotty there in the winter too. So you'd like to be there in time when things are a little bit nice.
Yeah. Also, Mike and I will both be attending. Isaac Bruce Foundation has kind of a charity fundraiser. Really, every year at this time in St. Louis, Isaac still gives back to St. Louis. And it's this weekend. It's this Friday in downtown St. Louis. But this year it's special because it's I can't believe this, Mike, how the years have gone by. It's the 25th anniversary of that first Greatest Show on Turf team that won Super Bowl 34. It's going to be a great night, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing all those guys I haven't seen for so many years, And usually when we get together, there's a lot of laughter.
And you tell some old war stories that you've probably told many times, right?
Yeah, rehash those stories, yeah.
And you're going to be part of the Cardinals are playing that night. So are you going to, before you go to the dinner, or are you going to be down at
Cardinals are playing the very next night on Saturday.
Oh, that's on Saturday. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll go to that game. I'm doing a pregame at 3:30, I think. Some Q&As with Mike Jones and Ricky Prohl. Then we'll go
at Busch,
and then we'll get introduced, I think, as a team in pregame, and then we'll go up into the stands there.
You're going to throw out the first pitch, big guy?
No.
What?
Let me tell you about my Little League. I played Little League one year, and
football or baseball?
Baseball.
Uh-huh.
And the coach, our pitchers were just getting hammered. So I was a tall kid at that age, and He said, "Why don't you go ahead and go on and pitch?" So I wound up and I was going to throw as hard as I could, and I threw it over the backstop. So yeah, that would eliminate anybody's career, I think.
You were Wild Thing before there was a Wild Thing, huh?
Well, he was this guy. This is get off the track here, but Mr. Harkness, God bless him, he's the neatest guy. I love.
Who's that? Coach Harkness?
Harkness, yeah, and he actually just lived down the street from me. But Mr. Harkness, this guy that we were playing was a really good team. They were the Pirates, or we were the Pirates, and I don't know what they were, but they were beating us like 31-0 or whatever it was, and they were just hitting us and hitting us and hitting us. So I look over to dugout, and he called timeout. He says, "Just go ahead and hit him." I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "Go ahead and hit him." Hit who? He said, the batter. "And I'm going to yell at you. What are you doing? What are you doing? Just ignore me. But I want you to hit him." So I threw a fastball right into the back of this poor kid. He goes down screaming for his mama, and the other coach comes out. And anyway, the game ended pretty much after that, pretty soon after that.
And how old were you then?
I was 11, I think, 10 or 11, something like that.
So you brought
the heat.
Mike Martz with a little bit of Bob Gibson.
I actually hit him too. I couldn't believe I actually hit him. 99% of the time I would have just missed him too. But
you were if you tried to, your location was a little lacking as a pitcher.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be right back, and we're going to preview Week 3 games when we come back on Talking Football.
Let me get this straight. Graybar is a distributor?
Yep. For more than 150 years, we supported electrical and datacom projects all over the country.
So you can get me products wherever and whenever I need them?
Yep. Thanks to our expansive national logistics network.
For any industry?
Yep. From construction sites and industrial plants to schools, hospitals, and just about everything in between.
So you could say Graybar is much more than a distributor?
Yep. You could say that.
They really do it all.
Yep. When you need a hand powering, connecting, or maintaining your operations, join the thousands of professionals who rely on Graybar to help keep them up and running. Yep, Graybar does that.
We're back, Mike. Week 3, Thursday night game. We don't have to say a whole lot of this about this game if you don't want to, but New England at the Jets, a pair of one-on-one teams.
I think that New England has done a great job of coaching. They just don't make mistakes. They're physical. I don't know how good they really are. They just don't beat themselves. They do everything you're supposed to do to win, and I like that. But I just think the Jets are about ready to get going. That defense got embarrassed. I think they'll put things together. I think the Jets win this one. It's at their place, so I think the Jets win it.
They're 6.5-point favorites. All right, Mike picks the Jets. I'll go with the Jets. Some early games. Well, first off, even before we go even further here, last season only one of 9 teams that started 0-2 made the playoffs, and that was the Houston Texans. So you think 0-2 is not too much, but boy, in this league, it's tough to put together a winning streak because the league is so balanced. So some teams that are 0-2, including one of them, Tennessee, 0-2 playing Green Bay, 1-1. This game's at Tennessee, Mike. Last week, I thought Matt LaFleur did a great job with Malik Willis, kind of tailoring the game plan to what he does. Only 14 passes, 53 running plays, but Willis was effective when he had to pass, and he's playing his former team. This is, again, assuming he starts. We're assuming he's going to start instead of Jordan Love.
Well, I think the real question is how's that quarterback at Tennessee is going to play? I mean, he gets on a roll, he gets going, and then he just does some of the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Did he? I missed it. Did he make another boneheaded play in this?
Yeah, he tried to flip it out of there and try to make a play and instead of just taking it, sack going down. He just tried to make some stupid play and turn the ball over. I mean, he's, and they talk to him constantly about it, I'm sure, and then he still does it. For me, he wouldn't be on the team anymore. I'd find somebody who's going to listen.
You wouldn't just bench him. You'd find somebody.
Yeah, that's bad. It's demoralizing for the football team.
Yeah,
you got to send a message somehow. I'd just get rid of him.
because both were very winnable games. As a matter of fact, I'm still trying to figure out how they lost to Chicago in the opener.
Yeah, they should. Chicago had like 10 yards of offense and won the game. How's that work?
Yeah.
So here's this guy, and he's not going to change. So you tell him, listen, you don't change, you're done. Not done here. I mean, not done being the starter. You're just out, period. Go on the street and see if somebody will take you. That's what I would do.
I'm having visions of you getting in the face of Joe Germain at halftime of a preseason game when you get.
Yeah, I'm not proud of that moment.
Who do you like here? Tennessee, surprisingly, is a 3-point favorite.
No, I'm going with Green Bay.
Yep, same here. Okay, speaking of 0-2 team, Indianapolis, to me, disappointing. I realize Anthony Richardson really doesn't have all that much experience. He was hurt most of last year. He started only 1 year in college, and he was better last week in their game in the second half at Green Bay, right? But still, he's been a disappointment. Caleb Williams, I guess he was better. Couple interceptions. My God, Mike, he has no time. Man,
I would tell you, Caleb Williams has got a significant potential as a quarterback in this league. I'd love to have that kid. He's athletic and all the stuff we know there, but that ball comes out fast, quick. Yeah. He's accurate. Yeah. I mean, he's a quick study in things. He sees and reacts. All the things that Fields couldn't do, he does.
Right.
He's just on such a rotten team.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, he is pressured. So he was sacked 7 times, hit 15 times, and you're not gonna last if you're hit.
No, he won't. He won't make it. That's a team that needs to go 2 tight ends.
Yeah.
Really.
And speaking of which, Mike, Indy is the worst rushing team in the league after 2 weeks. They've given up over 200 yards rushing both weeks. I mean, run the ball, right?
I picked Chicago here. I think they'll beat them. From what I saw of Indianapolis, they just looked so bad everywhere, and I was stunned. Yeah, I thought coming out of last season that they were, on an upward trend. And first of all, these guys hurt. I know they've got a million guys injured and whatnot, but the quarterback is not. He's still the difference between he and Caleb is substantial. Mm-hmm. He just does not want to get rid of the ball quick. Caleb's a real quick decision maker, accurate as all get out. I don't think they really know who he is yet. I mean, you put him in San Francisco or someplace like that, he's going to blow the doors off of things. That's how I see it.
Right. Yeah. He's thrown. I believe he's thrown 4 interceptions in the 2 games. In fairness to him, boy, they had a lot of passes drop, including Jonathan Taylor, who's a one of the league's best running backs, but he had a couple costly drops.
I'm not worried about the statistics on Caleb. I feel like I know who he is. And when you get that way about a guy as a coach, you just give him your trust and you just make things better for him. That's what they got to do. Yeah,
a part of me thinks Indy will have a bounce back, but I'm going to go with Chicago, and hopefully they'll run. They'll run the ball.
Is this at Indianapolis?
What's that?
Is this game played at Indy?
At Indy, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think Chicago wins that.
Yeah. Okay. One of only 2 teams matching unbeaten teams. 2-0 Houston at 2-0 Minnesota. Mike, from the outset, from the jump before game 1, said, "Hey, keep an eye on Sam Darnold," and you're looking pretty good on that one. Houston keeps rolling along. Now they could be without Joe Mixon at running back, but boy, C.J. Stroud, he didn't put up the greatest numbers last week against Chicago, a 19-13 win. They had terrible field position in the second half of that game, but man, he is smooth, Mike. He's a guy, really impressed me how accurate he is on the run.
He is the best passer that I've ever seen at any level in my life. Really? The very best. He's the most skilled, the best passer. I'm just dumbfounded by him. He is so exceptional. I don't know if there's anybody. I've never seen anybody like him.
Yeah,
physically from his skills and then his retention and what he can see and throw. And I mean, he's everything. To me, he is the role model there at that position. Really is a passer and whatnot. So, and they're good on defense. They got some receivers. Yeah, they're going to get going again. You know, they struggled. They bumped around there a little bit, but they'll get going.
Nico Collins, so wide. Speaking of receivers, what a talent! Big guy and just snatches that ball out of the air.
He's fun to watch, isn't he?
Yeah. And although Tank Dell hasn't done much, he's a little kind of a smaller guy, but a guy they use on end arounds and jet sweeps and all that
stuff. All that stuff comes to fruition. Though once they get going, these guys, you start feeding them the ball, they get excited and they'll get going.
Houston on the road, favored by 2.5. Who do you like here, Michael?
Houston. Yeah, Houston.
All right, just to be different, I'm going to go with I may live to regret this. I'm going to go with Minnesota on this one.
Now, Minnesota's a really good team, obviously. They really are. I think they're, McConnell, he's such a good offensive mind and head coach, but I think the defense, too, at Houston is going to be too much for him.
Yeah, and I sit here saying this. We're not sure, just if Justin Jefferson, the all-world receiver, is going to play in that game. As we sit here now, recording, talking football on Thursday here, so that'll be a key if he can't play. Okay, Philly at New Orleans. We've talked about New Orleans, how they've gotten going. I don't know how Philly lost that Sunday night game. I mean, they had it right there, and then that tremendous last 2-minute drill by Atlanta kind of stole the victory. I guess I say I don't know how they lost it. Mike, Philly's defensive line, big disappointment. Boy, did Atlanta run the ball against them.
They gashed him with that outside zone play. They had no answer. They tried to blitz him, do all that stuff, and they just gashed him. The biggest deal here was the transition from the first week to this week for Atlanta in the offensive line and what they were doing. They did such a better job at protecting the quarterback. And he wasn't very good in this game in the first half. He completed passes, but the ball was not on mark. You know what I mean? They made catches, but low, off to the side. They still caught the ball. That's not who he is. He's a very accurate guy. In the second half, he kind of got going. So he's kind of feeling his way back. And I think that they've got great potential here. I think they're starting to hit their
Who's
stride.
that? You mean Atlanta?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Cousins, they were talking on the Manning cast. I don't know if you ever watched that for the games or if you're just looking at game film, but they said they needed to put him more under center, play action passes, and they did that a lot. It's kind of what Kirk Cousins does.
Yeah, they did, and he's just not confident yet with that foot, and he's not pressing that foot like he should at times, and as he did in the second half, he didn't miss. Then he got going, but the second half is really who he is. The first half he did fine, but he's still location of the throws weren't as sharp as they should be.
Yeah. New Orleans 2.5 favorite in the Superdome. I'm going to jump on the Saints bandwagon here and pick the Saints.
Yeah, I think you'd have to pick the Saints. I think you can't come out with the blocks like they did and run the ball like they did against a team like that. And yeah, I'd pick them.
Yeah. Okay. The only other matchup between unbeaten teams, 2-0 teams, the LA Chargers 2-0 at Pittsburgh 2-0. Two kind of surprising teams in terms of maybe so far exceeding expectations, but not if you were listening to Talking Football from the start, because in week 1, Mike, you said Jim Harbaugh, he's going to change the culture there from day one, and it looks like he has. They're much more of a balanced team. They've got who had J.K. Dobbins as the leading rusher in the NFL 2 weeks into the season. The Harbaugh fingerprints are all over this team.
The first thing to look at when you look at teams play, to me, and it would being a coach, is you look at the details of all these guys that are playing positions and how disciplined they are, linemen, their footwork, defenders, how well they get off blocks, all that stuff. And you see where teams aren't as well coached in certain areas as they should be. You know what I mean?
Right.
Chargers, no, he's got it. Yeah, he's got them wired. He's changing they're a physical team, taking the pressure off of Herbert, rushing the football. They've been kind of okay and winning. They don't make mistakes, but as time goes on, they're going to really start to generate more offense too, I think.
Yeah. Now, Pittsburgh, we mentioned in our first segment that they're 2-0, scoring 1 touchdown, but they have no turnovers. and it's been Justin Fields at quarterback. They've kind of found a way to kind of do what they do and grind out a couple of victories here.
Yeah, they're going to have to do more though, because the Chargers will put points on the board in this game. They'll put some points up, and I think Justin Fields, beat him up pretty good over the years, and I think he's doing a pretty good job there. I really do. This is the best he's ever played because he's gotten away from that horrible situation at the Bears, but still, it's not enough. And Micah does he just does it with mirrors. I don't know how he does it. He figures out a way to win.
Yeah.
He's a great coach, but I think it's just not enough for the Chargers.
You're going to pick Chargers. Pittsburgh, just a 1-point favorite at home. So you picking the Chargers. I have immense respect for Mike Tomlin, but in this one, I'm going to go Chargers as well. Okay, let's move along here. Okay, I'd call this the Desperation Bowl. It's a late game, 3:25 on Sunday. 0-2 Baltimore, 1-1 Dallas. The Ravens have been 0-3 only once in their 29-year history, and they've started 0-2 4 other times. They've never made the playoffs in years where they started 0-2. They've allowed, you think of great Ravens defenses, 514 yards passing in 2 games. They're last in the league in pass defense under new defensive coordinator Zachary Orr. How do they get that righted over there?
They don't. It'll be 0-3. I think what happens, like I said earlier, Dallas is a very, very talented team. And when you take a talented team like that gets embarrassed at home like they did, they'll be completely different this week. They just will. And it's going to be too much for Baltimore to handle. Baltimore will be 0-3 after this one.
Yeah, Baltimore on the road is a 1-point favorite, but I like Dallas too, especially at home. And they, as bad as the Ravens are feeling, you're right. Dallas just totally embarrassed last week. So I'm sure they're going to have their wits about them. Okay, a classic NFC West, one of the league's best rivalries. I still remember Mike Martz getting the broom out after a sweep at the old Candlestick Park. The Rams and the 49ers. Rams are 0-2, played great in the first week, were just destroyed last week by Arizona. And San Fran 1-1. Again, we mentioned this at the top. No Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua for the Rams and beat up offensive line. And San Fran, no McCaffrey in. Deebo Samuel's out. But again, as we pointed out, that Brock Purdy still has George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and of course, Jordan Mason, who has put up a couple of 100-yard rushing games.
I think, the 49ers, they lose those 2 guys, but they just fill in the ranks there. The key here is, the Red Cross tent down in L.A. with the Rams, they're decimated. They're just decimated. And even when they're really all healthy, running on all cylinders, the 49ers still beat them. I just don't think that – I think this one could get away from them. And I hate to see that because I like to see the Rams win, but I think the 49ers beat them and beat them solidly. And
there's always a huge 49er following in L.A. that the 49er fans come out in groves.
Well, the key in this game, though, will be the offensive line being able to protect Jared Goff. Mm-hmm. And if they can't rush the football, when you have offensive linemen missing, so, you can't protect him, so we're going to run it. Well, they're not going to be good at running the ball either with backup. You know what I mean? It just doesn't follow the way.
Right. And Bosa had a couple sacks last week, so he's on his game. This could be a tough one. San Fran, 7.5 road favorite. Mike, it sounds like you're going with San Fran.
Yes.
Yeah, same here. Okay, just a couple more before we call it a show. We always have to mention Kansas City because there's a pretty big following of the Chiefs in St. Louis. This is the Sunday night game at Atlanta. Kansas City 2-0, Atlanta 1-1. Kirk Cousins led that surprising comeback, as we mentioned. No Pacheco for the Chiefs at 2-0. The Chiefs have been kind of on a high wire act. Can they get to 3-0 here, Michael?
Yeah, they can. I think this will be a real tight game, but I do think that Atlanta wins this game. I think winning that game last week for Atlanta has got a chance of getting them over the hump. You got to when that happens, it's just such a shot in the arm. And the difference between the first week and the second week with them is remarkable. But a couple of things. Defensively, they're really good. They're really good on defense. I mean, they're good. Yeah, and they can get the quarterback with 4 guys. And the running game is so strong.
Yes.
That's before you get to Cousins and whatnot. The only thing that I'm concerned about is with all the pressures that they bring, Atlanta holding up in the protections. But I think they'll take a book out of last week and a page out of last week's book and just say, we're going to have to grind this one out to win it too. And I think they win it. I do think that they're going to have a hard time protecting Mahomes in this game and establishing a pretty decent running game. So, but I do think that Atlanta's got a chance of winning this game.
Yeah. I'm sure Atlanta looked at all the troubles the Chiefs had at left tackle. They had tried a couple guys there. Just to be different, Chiefs are favored by 3.5 on the road. I'm going to go with the Chiefs, not with much conviction, but it's reached the point where you just, no matter what happens in the game, you feel like the Chiefs are gonna figure out a way to win. But
not this week.
I think you can only get by so long doing that. Sooner or later, it's going to catch up with you.
Yeah, that rubber band breaks after a while. I think they've got some holes. Rush defense is one of them, and then the offensive line thing is going to be critical because it's not just one-on-one on that side. They'll beat him in the pass protection that way, but all of a sudden they start running games, and the timing of picking that stuff up with a guy that's not confident and new, it's
right.
Tough.
Yeah. 2 Monday night games, 2 for the price of 1. Jacksonville at Buffalo, Washington at Cincy. Mike, any other game that catches your eye? We went over quite a few, but
the Cardinals from last week, they're playing Detroit, aren't they?
Yeah. Late game at Arizona. Detroit's a 3-point favorite.
Yeah, I'll go with Detroit, although I think this is going to be a really hard game for them.
Yeah, they need to bounce back. They haven't been bad, but it doesn't look like vintage Detroit quite yet, does it?
I don't know what he's doing. The coordinator is I don't know what they're doing this last week. They got kind of goofy. Just stay with what you do, And when I say that, stay with what you do, he's done such a great job of mixing the run with play action and surprising you with stuff that, it just didn't seem like he had that same rhythm that he had in the past.
Yeah. For Arizona, Kyler Murray had some jump in his step. They got Marvin Harrison Jr. going, but I just think I'm with you on this one. I think Detroit's gonna have a bounce back game here and improve to 2-1. Mike, we covered a lot of ground. It's always a lot of fun. Look forward to seeing you Friday at the Isaac Bruce gala. And
should be fun.
And thanks again. And we'll be back next week on Talking Football.
Are you ready for a challenging and rewarding career? There are quality jobs in the construction industry.
I got out of college and my career choices were very limited, and this provided me with a plan for the present and the future at the same time.
I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was making less than I make as a first-year apprentice painter.
I didn't go to college. I have no college debt. I make more money than the majority of people I know that went to college.
Take your first step towards a rewarding career. Visit stlouispdf.org.